fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today we are talking about a book that has been recommended to me over and over again, especially when I started reading Book of the New Sun. A lot of people said, man, if you're enjoying Book of the New Sun, you have got to read The Dying Earth, because The Dying Earth is apparently a major inspiration on the Book of the New Sun, and now that I've read it, I think that's absolutely right. So yes, today we are talking about Jack Vance's The Dying Earth. So this book is a fix-up novel. It's a lot of short stories that Jack Vance put together to make this novel. However, this is the first time that it was ever published, all of them together. They were not published, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I can tell from the Internet Speculative Fiction database, these were all released for the first time in this book right here. So maybe they were made to go together. I don't know. I do feel like there are links to that between them. I don't feel like this is a typical fix-up novel. So this is a collection of short stories and novelettes that are all linked, and they're linked because they all take place during a time far, far, far into Earth's future, when the sun is almost completely lived out its life, and Earth is almost dead, or is dying. And many generations from ours have passed. Many cities have risen and fallen. One of the things that he describes is the Earth does not have a lot of really tall mountains, because erosion over all this time has made the Earth almost completely flat or smooth. Really, really interesting setting. And I didn't know what to expect when I was going into this, but what I came out with was absolutely incredible. And I've already said this a couple of times on the channel, but I'm going to say it again. This, to me, felt a lot like fairy tale retellings. Not that he's specifically retelling fairy tales, but a lot of these felt like, to me, that they were kind of connecting to fairy tales. And the way that I started thinking about this as I was reading it is that these are post-apocalyptic fairy tales told right before the end of the world, right before humanity dies. These are the world's last fairy tales. And that's very interesting to me, because in my study of fairy folk and myth and all that, we're constantly trying to look back to the earliest origin of these stories. And I feel like Jack Vance went a different direction and said, what would happen to these stories all the way at the end? And that's what I think is here in this book. And it's really a wonderful read. I highly recommend it. So the novel opens, and it's strange because it opens in this version differently than it opens in this one, and we'll get to that in a bit. But the novel that I read, which is the first UK edition, opens with the story Turjan of Mere. And in this story, there's a wizard named Turjan who is trying to use magic to create life. And he keeps creating these humanoid creatures, but he can't give them the spark of life. He doesn't know how to do that. So he remembers a conversation that he had a sage with once that talked about Pandalum, who is a wizard that, and I don't know if they ever call him wizard. He is somebody that understands and knows almost every spell that the Earth has ever known. So he goes and decides to visit this Pandalum. And he has to go to a place, I believe it's called Embellion, probably. So he needs to go to Embellion, and there's a spell to get there, and he goes there. And the first person he meets is this woman who is like livid the second she sees him and tries to kill him. He survives and eventually gets to meet Pandalum, and Pandalum offers him the spell that will allow him to create life as long as he is able to do something for him. And he goes on this quest. He gets this rune necklace for Pandalum, and he comes back and he becomes the apprentice of Pandalum. And eventually he asks about the woman who attacked him when he first got there. And Pandalum says, I also create life. She is one of my creations, but she's an earlier creation, and I messed up. And when she came out of the vat, he says, she found everything beautiful and good to her seems ugly and enrages her and just makes her very violent. So she runs around this kind of perfect place that Pandalum has created and kills flowers and small animals and is just in this rage. Everything she sees makes her crazy. So Turjan eventually learns how to create human life, and he decides that he wants to make a sister to this woman that can't see beauty without being enraged. And the woman who can't see beauty without being enraged is named Sice. And he decides to make an exact replica of her. And he creates a woman named Sane. And she does not have the same affliction of beauty causing such anger. On the first half of the story, the first 3 or 4 stories in this are linked to this one occurrence, him visiting Embellion and meeting and apprenticing under Pandalum. And this kind of sets all these stories into motion. So we have 4 short stories that are based around these characters, and they link and they link and they link. And then we have 2 separate, I think a novelette and a novella, that are based in the same area on this dying earth that are not connected to these characters. So in a weird way, you get kind of 3 stories, one that is a link to a person, to a link to a person, to a link to a person, and then the last 2. But that's all I'm going to talk about here in this video. I'll go much deeper in for the deep dive, but I feel like that's enough that can get you interested in it. Okay, so Jack Vance wrote these stories in the mid to late 40s, probably, I don't know, yeah, probably the later 40s, while he was in the Merchant Marines. And they were published in 1950 by Hillman Periodicals. And this is book number 41, and it was 25 cents when it was released in 1950. This is the first edition, first printing of The Dying Earth. I really wanted a copy of this as I read this, because the more I read into this, the more I realized this was going to be kind of a huge book for me. So I wanted this first edition. So I was lucky. I went out onto eBay and I found a copy that I think they were selling for like $50, and I offered them $25, and they took it. So that was very, very nice. I'm glad that I have that. So that's the first publication in 1950. No idea who did the cover art on that. ISFDB doesn't list who did the cover art on that either. Next, it was published by Lancer Books, and the art on that one was by Ed Emschwiller. And that was released in 1962. And that's the one that many people know as the first Dying Earth. It's got that wild picture on it. I don't have a copy of that one. Finally, in 1972, it saw its first publication in the UK from Mayflower Books. And the cover art on that, which is absolutely wild, a huge plant creature thing, which there's a lot of in these stories. That is by Chris Foss. It was 30 pence when it first came out. I think that's the right way to say that. Mine has a sticker on it for $1.25, which I hate, that I'll eventually try to get off. So yeah, there's the 2 first editions that I have, the first American edition and the first UK edition. And I'm glad to have both. I'll probably keep both of them, mainly because I have more of the series. Here's The Eyes of the Other World, also by Mayflower. In fact, the Outlaw Bookseller just recently put out a video about this cover artist. And I came across the Jack Vance collection that I got recently that I'm really happy to have, and a lot of them are this early Mayflower. So this book was written in 1950, so the first thing you'll notice as you read through is that there are certain ideological tropes that are not as prevalent as they are today. Obviously, certain parts of this did not age well, which is as is to be expected when something is this old. I only was pulled out 2 or 3 times with stuff that felt like a little bit archaic ideas to me. Nothing that big. Most of the time, I was just insanely entertained and enjoying myself immensely. The first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that this is science fantasy. A lot of people like to say, no, this is just pure fantasy, which I absolutely disagree with. While the science is not straight out explained and handed to us, it is everywhere hinted at. It reminds me of the Book of the New Sun, and the inspiration that this took from this is really obvious. In the first book, The Shadow of the Torture, there's a part where he goes to this crazy greenhouse-like place, and it feels like the ending of the last story in The Dying Earth when he's gone to this museum of man. Like, I can see the link directly between these two. It's really wild. So yeah, I would definitely consider this science fantasy, and I can point to right at the very beginning of the book when they are creating life. They use what they call spells, but the people come out of vats, and you get this image in your head of like cloning vats, right? Really what they're practicing is cloning, and the magic could be magic, or it could be a ritual of pushing the right buttons on the machine. It's really interesting, and you see this throughout. There's a point where they're in this city that has these walkways that are like treadmills that move them forward at a quicker pace. Yeah, this stuff is all throughout this book. You see this magic fairy tale type stuff that is butt up against science of the future. It's really, really wild and very well done, and that makes imagining the book a lot more fun, because as I was reading, if I didn't really force myself to like, okay, what would this look like? This is a far, far, far future when humans have evolved technology way beyond what I can imagine, and then forgotten that technology, and now it's laying around for people that don't understand exactly what it does to pick it up. That's what I need to imagine this world looking like, and that is absolutely wild. It's a mix of science fiction and fantasy. If anybody ever makes a movie of this, which I would love to see, or a series, they would have to keep that in mind when they made it. It's like Roger Zelazny's Lord of Light. It's described in such fantastic terms that if you're not careful, you'll lose sight of the fact that all of everything that's made in that novel is made with technology. You have to consider that when you imagine it in your head, and this is very similar to that. All right, let's get a little bit nerdy. I used to play D&D. My brother introduced me to D&D. I absolutely loved it growing up, and the magic system that was created for D&D obviously very much based on this. And if you look in the appendix, I think they call it Appendix N, all the stuff that they were reading when they created it, this is way up there, a Vancian form of magic. And that is that spells have to be remembered at the beginning of the day. They're like, I think he said they're like syllabic. So they have to remember a large chunk of stuff, and there's only enough room in somebody's head to memorize a certain amount of them. And once they cast them, they're gone. They lose them for that day. So the second story is really interesting because it's about this wizard that has remembered 6 spells and is trying to survive He's chasing this woman and trying to survive as she runs through all these really terrifying places, but he's running out of spells. And the whole time I was reading it, it was so cool to see the origin of a magic system that I know very well. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. The prose in this is absolutely beautiful. The landscapes that he describes are wonderful, strange landscapes, really, really wild stuff. The character development is okay. I know that Vance isn't really known for his character development. That's not what people talk about when they talk about how awesome Vance is. Some of these people seemed very flat, especially a lot of the female characters. This is going to be a contender for me easily of top 10 of the year that I've read so far. Easily. This was incredible. So much fun to read. I really enjoyed it. It was little vignettes of hallucinatory, end of the world fairy tales. It was incredible. I highly recommend that you read this. All right, that's it for now. We'll see you next time.